Hi, I'm Patricia Sims. I'm the founder of World Elephant Day. And today I'm talking with Roberta Staley, who is the filmmaker, writer, director, producer of Elephant Warriors. And I believe today is its world premiere. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so that's going to be very exciting. So Roberta, why don't you tell me a little bit about this project and what inspired you to make this documentary?
Right. So it has its roots in 2019, pre-COVID. And my partner in crime, Tallulah, who is a videographer, photographer, we tend to go as a team to various areas around the world and write and do magazine articles for various clients, as well as shoot footage for documentaries. And we were in Kenya in 2019. We were there covering the story of Jake Wall, who is a graduate of University of British Columbia. And he had this really innovative, he's a science director of the Mara Elephant Project. And so him and his team had put together this wonderful project, collaring elephants and then monitoring their way around the Maasai Mara, which is in southern Kenya. And so I wrote that story for UBC magazine, and I was just enthralled with the projects that they were doing. And so obviously there was, the whole world had a hiatus during COVID. But during that time, we heard that some women rangers, some female conservation rangers had been introduced to the Mara Elephant Project ranger teams. And so I thought, this is fantastic, because I think that in Africa, women are just starting to get into this really challenging and also very dangerous career. And so because we already had a connection with the Mara Elephant Project, I connected with them and said, can we come and do a story and shoot a documentary? And they were like, oh, okay, sure, why not? And so in 2022, Tallulah and I, we spent a month in June. So that actually is because Kenya, southern Kenya is below the equator. That's actually winter for them. So we spent a month and we camped out with conservation rangers and lived in tents and ate all the food that they ate, like ugali and chapatis. And we did treks through places like the Nkwari Forest and the Mau Forest, and spoke to the female rangers who were available, and really got incredible insight into how how there's a real kind of feminist movement going on in Kenya. And it's so interesting because we were able to make the connection that women's equality and women's emancipation is really linked to conservation. And but we can get into that.
Well, that's true. I mean, we've seen this actually increasing in the last 5 or 6 years, actually, with World Elephant Day and with the different elephant organizations that we're affiliated with each year on the annual campaign day, and just the involvement of women more and more taking a front line in conservation, and not just in sort of anti-poaching initiatives, but just in general wildlife management. So it's really incredible to see this empowerment of women, because of course the connection to the land and the communities and environment itself is really, something really important, obviously for all human beings, but specifically with women, and African women in these communities really hold these communities together. So this level of empowerment and connection to nature, and really being able to take this front line position in, as from a job perspective, is really remarkable to see. So it's incredible that you've been able to focus on this with this film. Now, was for you as a filmmaker and journalist, was this your first time traveling to Kenya, and how was that for you?
It was my second trip, and I actually have done reporting in Africa before. I when I was really young, I spent 2 months in Africa, actually just kind of working on a master's degree, which never saw the light of day. But we won't get into that. I've also been to South Africa, and I was there covering stories related to HIV/AIDS for various magazine clients. as well as looking at some microfinance programs in South Africa that were sponsored by Canadian organizations and NGOs. And yeah, so I've been to West Africa, and but I wasn't doing any, conservation related stories. I've been to South Africa, and then I've been to Kenya twice. And I love Africa. Like the moment I get off, I feel like I'm at home.
Oh, that's great. Well, amazing that you've been able to put this through for a film. And then as a filmmaker, tell me about your work as a filmmaker. Is this your first film project, or have you done several projects?
Yeah, my very first project was probably a little bit nuts. I was finally finishing that master's program back in 2014 or 15, I think it was, at Simon Fraser University. And I had focused on, and I was focusing on Afghan women. I had reported from Afghanistan before, and I wanted to take that. So what I decided to do was amalgamate my final master's thesis with going back to Afghanistan and actually doing a documentary. I had never done a documentary before. And I just didn't want a thesis to be a written thesis and to end up on a shelf somewhere gathering dust. I thought I want to do something that is actually going to, see the light of day, that is going to be disseminated around the world. So I love documentaries. I watch them all the time. And I was like, how hard can it be? Right. So I consulted with a friend of mine who's a filmmaker. And I said, what sort of equipment do I need? And what should I do? And so I got a list of all the equipment. And so went out and bought it 10 grand's worth. And then with the help of another friend who actually is Afghan, I ended up connecting with a company in Afghanistan that does media work. And so I had some, telephone talks or Zoom talks with them. And they said, yes, we'll get you a crew together. They absolutely will speak English. No problem. It's going to be great. So anyway, so I step off the plane in Kabul and am met by someone I'd worked with before, a fixer, and meet my crew. They don't speak a word of English. And so I had brought a brand new GH4 camera, and I as well, I had downloaded a video of how to work your GH4 camera. Well, my cameraman didn't know English, so he couldn't figure out how to work the GH4 camera, right? So we start off, and the first 2 or 3 days of filming are disastrous because he's trying to figure out how to work the G4 camera. So the focus of that documentary was again very gender oriented, and it was about female journalists and filmmakers and their impact on gender norms in Afghanistan. So a little bit more, a little bit heavy on the academic side, but it was great fun. Again, I spent a month there. I was there during Ramadan, which is the worst time of year to, possibly go and film anything. There was kidnappings on my street where I was staying. There was one area where we were filming, and it was really close to the parliament buildings, and we were getting a whole bunch of B-roll of this gorgeous market that is really close to the parliament, the brand new parliamentary buildings. And the next day, there was a terrible attack by the Taliban, and they exploded a 3/4-ton truck right outside the front doors, blew the doors open, and I can't remember how many, I think it was about 6 Taliban soldiers with backpacks and, weapons and ammunition stormed Parliament. There was a really big, very important decision that was being made, or vote that was being undertaken on that day. So all the MPs were present, but that explosion ended up killing and injuring dozens and dozens and dozens of people. And so if we would have done our B-roll a day later, I wouldn't be here talking to you. So there was things like this going on all the time. Like you would travel to an interview, and you would come back along the same road, and there would have been a suicide attack, and there was suddenly a crater, a crater in the road that was, the size of an apartment building.
Yes. Wow, those are great stories, and certainly the trials and tribulations of being a documentary filmmaker, of which I know all too well myself. But
Mhm.
I mean, it's always an exciting opportunity to go, to countries and to put yourself, parachute yourself into a situation, right?
Mm.
And find the story and work with the local people to unravel those stories. What about with Mara Elephant Project and your team there? Tell me a little bit about MEP and how that was for you working with them.
Well, they were very, very generous. I mean, they allowed, my Tallulah and I to camp out with the Rangers, which was fantastic. And but it was very cold because again, it's winter. We went there in June, but it's winter. And there was, lots of rain and all the rest of it. And there was one night when we were staying in tents and my poor tent just gave up the ghost. And I went to go, it was after dinner. There was a pouring rain and we had to wait until the rain lessened so that we could sort of run to our tents. And I opened up my tent, and which is just the ceiling has the top is collapsed and there's just water pouring into the interior of my tent, and my sleeping bag is completely soaked, like it's floating, right? So I'm like, oh, great. Right. So, so I asked Tallulah, I said, can I bunk with you tonight in your tent? And she's like, no. I'm like, oh, great. What am I going to do? But yeah, so we ate what the Rangers ate. We ate ugali, which is a maize-based, how would you describe it? I guess it's a carbohydrate, and it's I guess sort of like it's a goopy white kind of tasteless
Kind of
carb.
like polenta.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, exactly.
It's
And
like polenta.
they love it. It's a huge staple in Kenya, and I understand that it's actually kind of the national dish. I hated it. I'm really fussy. And then we had fried chapatis in the morning, which is, I guess, wheat-based flour. Not too sure, but um, and again, I was just like, oh, I don't like these, right? So I get these chapatis. I'm a terrible person. I get these chapatis, and then like there was some cattle like nearby, and there was this one really, really old cow who was attracted by the smell of these frying chapatis, and she loved chapatis, as it turned out. And so in the mornings, I would actually feed her my chapatis. So I'm a terrible person. So
That's good. You made a new friend with the cow.
I did. And then no one could figure out, why is this cow hanging out? And they'd be like, shoo, shoo, shoo. And she'd be like, well, where's my chapatis? So yeah.
Well, that's pretty fun. Well, I mean, working out in the field with local people, with rangers, I know I've done that myself in my work in mostly in Thailand with elephants, and so it's always really pretty exciting. And eating local food and drawing from local resources for food, it's actually I was always pleasantly surprised with what we actually had to eat. But now with the film itself, then, I mean, what do you really want people to take away from this film? What's the most important message that you think it can offer for people?
Well, I think that I really want people to understand the urgency of elephant conservation. Like, they really are on the precipice of disappearing. That is so important that people acknowledge and recognize that. Like, there's only about 400,000 elephants left on the entire continent. And um, and there's about 95 elephants that die every day from either poaching or human elephant conflict. And at that rate, there's not going to be any elephants in about 10 years. And so they're so important to the ecosystem. They are Africa's gardeners. They do all sorts of important things. They clear um, plains and landscapes. They deposit seeds. They fertilize, and there's so many. They have so many different functions within the ecosystem, and so now the correlation to that, of course, is the rapidly expanding population of Africa. As Africa gets, thankfully, in many parts healthier, you are seeing a real population boom. So, but part of that is happening because women are having, or traditionally are, have really, really large families. So in Kenya, for example, the population has pretty much doubled since about 2000. And so if women, but the thing is that once women become educated and once women have the opportunity to pursue careers, what they do is that they really, the size of their families declines dramatically. Maybe they'll have 1, 2, maybe 3 children at the most. And that is in comparison to the 5, 6, 7, 8 children that women who are uneducated, don't know about birth control and are just simply, relegated to the role of homemaker and mother. That's what happens. And so once you see gender equality, once you actually start seeing women start to carve out careers for themselves, you see these smaller families. And so that is critical, because what is happening in the non-protected areas, like about 60% of the elephant range is outside of protected areas, which means that elephants are immediately put into direct conflict with either poachers and or humans. And so with these burgeoning populations, you see all these people who are, there has to be some place for them to go, right? So they carve out farms and run cattle or sheep or goats in areas that are traditionally elephant territory, which is, places where elephants have fed and lived and, raised their families and all the rest of it. So when humans start to encroach upon elephant land, what happens is that so they create farms and they grow things like maize, which for elephants is like candy, right? And so when the maize crops or sorghum crops or other crops, when they're ready to harvest, then elephants that are nearby are going to go, oh, yummy, right? And so a farmer can go out, and if an elephant herd or even just a small number of elephants have invaded their maize crop, it can be completely decimated. Well, of course, the farmers are going to be really angry. And so what ends up happening is that they chase elephants with spears or arrows, and oftentimes they're poisoned. And so that is a huge factor as to human elephant conflict. So you really need to, so women are really critical, because you need to, put, in a sense, a brake on the on population growth in those parts of Africa where elephants reign.
Right. Well, I mean, again, women, being a really integral part to this work and to this project. In fact, I mean, we've worked with Mara Elephant Project with World Elephant Day for the past, I guess, 4 or 5 years. They're part of our Friends of World Elephant Day program, and I know that it's really important work that's now starting to really focus on the issues with human-elephant conflict. Over the years from when I started World Elephant Day back in 2012, we were really at the peak of the ivory crisis. And there was so much going on, work from many different organizations in Africa, worldwide, to really try to stop this incredible senseless slaughter of elephants. And the poaching still carries on. There's still an ivory trade. It's to a much lesser extent. Of course, we had certain successes along the way with enforcement policies, but the longer range problem that we're all facing for elephants and within Africa and Asia is habitat loss, because as much as we want to protect these amazing creatures, and the importance that they play in the environment from as a keystone species, as a climate change mitigator. Fundamentally, if these animals don't have habitat, then the whole ecosystem is going to crumble. So the conflict issue becomes really, really important, especially when you've got this proximity of human populations, villages, livelihoods attached to habitat. Elephants and people basically compete for the same habitat. So the challenge that we're seeing worldwide really is, how do we learn to live with elephants peacefully and cooperatively and harmoniously, and there's a number of examples starting in different places within Africa, within Asia, where we're starting to see these programs where there's a strategy on working with elephants, working with habitat, creating areas where elephants can still roam freely, but then human beings can also live freely and sustainably as well. So that's why this project and what Mara Elephant Project is working on, and I looking forward to seeing your film tonight, you know, to see like how this is working and how this is really resting in the hands of women, you know, that women are playing such a huge role in these new strategies.
Women are the answer to everything.
Well, don't we know it?
World.
Of course, right? And of course, elephants being a prime example of that as a matriarchal society, right? You know, so well, I'm super excited to be there tonight. I'm really glad that it worked out, you know, and for those of you in Vancouver, right, tonight is the night for Elephant Warriors at the Norman and Annette Rothstein Theater in downtown Vancouver, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. So I'll look forward to seeing you there tonight, and all the other folks that are going to be coming that are supporting your work and supporting this film and the work of Mara Elephant Project. So thanks very much, Roberta, for talking with me today. And we'll look forward to seeing you tonight, and look forward to watching Elephant Warriors, which will also be available here on the World Elephant Day YouTube channel.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.